people make mistakes, but they also make choices, and that distinction is important to James. And that to me was kind of like summing up what the like overarching sort of theme that I wanted to explore in this story and like with these characters, because I think in fandom we're constantly having these discussions about the morality of different characters and who is redeemable and who isn't redeemable. And I think Jegulus is like a great ship for kind of playing around with the idea of like who has the privilege of making choices
Yeah.
and like the idea of people making choices and what choices we have the freedom to make or don't have the freedom to make, and what is a mistake and what is a choice.
Hello, everyone. Here we are with Saf, aka Messermoon, the author of Choices, which is one of my favorite marauders fics. It's about Jegulus. So, welcome, Saf.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for coming. And so, first of all, I wanted to ask you to introduce people a little bit to Choices, what it's about, what kind of fic it is. What can you tell us?
So Choices is a canon compliant-ish fic that takes place during the sort of Marauders era, and it follows the story of James Potter and Regulus Black and their relationship, and but also I think in general kind of that whole sort of generation of characters and their friendships and their relationships from fifth year to 1981 to the death of
Yeah.
the Potters.
Well, okay. So yeah, like just for everyone to know, it's mainly based on Jegulus, but there are other ships in it as well, like Wolfstar, for example, and others. So you can find a lot of characters in it, and it's pretty much like everything it's in it. So basically, when we talk about the Marauders, it's like Wolfstar is the biggest ship ever, and the most famous
Mhm.
one. And I was wondering, like, how, yeah, how did you come like to know Jegulus, and why did you think of writing choices about them, like specifically?
I think I came to them the same way that a lot of people did, which was that there was a sort of moment on TikTok where like it was called Jegulus Week, but a bunch of creators started just like making TikToks about Jegulus, and mostly it was in a very jokey way, like kind of like this is a crazy ship, like ha ha ha. And I think like I like most people when I first saw it was like that is a crazy ship. Why would anybody do that? Um, but then like after a while I was like, okay, but like because people kept saying that there's no way that this could work. Like there's no way that these two characters could work together. And then I was like, well, that sounds like a challenge. And I couldn't find any real like long form fan fictions that like it felt like they were trying to sort of like tell the story. It just found like I thought I like there were a lot of sort of one shots or like little sort of like cute stories, but none of them where I felt like they were like convincing me that this relationship could work. So I was like, okay, well, I wonder if I can do that. So I started writing the story to see if I could convince myself that these two characters could work together.
Oh my God, you started a cult. Oh my God, yeah, I think you did an amazing job with it.
Thank you.
So the I think you've written other works as well as like
Mhm.
not just choices, um, but I feel like choices is like the one that stuck more in the
Mhm.
fandom or something like that. So I was wondering, why did you choose choices as the title for this story? Is it your first story that you wrote, or like not the first one?
Yeah, it was the first fan fiction that I wrote.
Mm-hmm.
And like the title comes from like the first part of the story that I wrote
Mm-hmm.
is the description or like whatever that first paragraph is, where it's like, you know, people make mistakes, but they also make choices, and that distinction is important to James. And that to me was kind of like summing up what the like overarching sort of theme that I wanted to explore in this story and like with these characters, because I think in fandom we're constantly having these discussions about the morality of different characters and who is redeemable and who isn't redeemable. And I think Jegulus is like a great ship for kind of playing around with the idea of like who has the um, privilege of making choices
Yeah.
and like the idea of people making choices and what choices we have the freedom to make or don't have the freedom to make, and what is a mistake and what is a choice. You know, like it follows throughout the story, I think, with all of the characters, really. And then, like, especially with James Potter, who I think is really held up as this, like, perfect, kind of morally pure
Hmm.
character. I liked the idea of having him start in a place where he feels like he can tell the difference between right and wrong, and, like, sort of by the end, he doesn't know anymore, like, what's right and wrong. Everything becomes much blurrier. So, yeah, that's why
Yeah.
Choices is, is the title.
Yeah. Also, like there are like some parts in the book in which I think you described very like well the way in which like James is always thought as perfect, and then sometimes there are like
Hmm.
some moments of his life in which is like maybe I cannot like be as perfect as people think me to be.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
like
Well,
that was so important to me. Like, oh, I love James so much. But yeah, and I think you described it in a way that made it very clear for everyone that sometimes what people think of us is not how we have to be, you know?
mhm.
So,
Yeah, I think
yeah.
I was definitely kind of like sort of trying to respond to like again the way that this character is presented in this fandom where it's like he is perfect and he has to be perfect. And I'm like that's kind of an insane amount of pressure to put on like if you think about him as like if you then try and write that as like an actual person, it's insane
Yeah.
to expect an actual person, especially if that person is like a 16-year-old boy, to be perfect and to always do the right thing and always know what the right thing is in the moment.
No, exactly. Yeah. Let's leave choices for a sec. But you have another story that I've read and that I loved so much. It's pretty short, so I've read it in like an afternoon, and it's called As It Was, and it's
Yeah.
about Godric and Salazar, and they're also mentioned in choices
Hmm.
in some parts. And I love the parallel between Jegulus and them. So can you talk a little bit about it? How did you think about it?
Well, I'm really glad you read that story because I love it.
Oh, it's so
I
good.
love
It's
those
so
two
good.
characters. Um, but I've always liked the idea of the founders and trying to write something with them, and I always liked the idea of uh uh because like it's something about the way that it's told, this idea that Salazar just is a villain, like never really made sense to me because like it's like they're four friends and they make this school together. So I was like something else had to happen. I don't know. So I loved the idea of playing with this like this this animosity that exists between like the houses of Gryffindor and Slytherin, and this idea that like it starts with these two friends who have like this falling out, and then like obviously in the story they're like more than friends, but like something about that was really appealing to me, and like this idea that this kind of like repeats itself throughout history, so then you get echoes of that with like James and um, Regulus, and then I also have that with Harry and Draco later on in a different story that I wrote. Um, but yeah, and then I also like a lot of the time prejudice comes from fear, and I think in the kind of context of the story that we're writing, it's harder to see why the wizards would fear the muggles, but I was like in a historic context, I feel like you can play around with that a little bit more, that they feel persecuted, that maybe because you know obviously you have like witch hunts and stuff in history.
Yeah.
So I liked sort of playing around with that and trying to like complicate Salazar's decisions and choices the same way that I was trying to complicate Regulus's decisions and choices.
Yeah, no, that was so interesting for me to read, because it gives you like an insight on the past, and also like the friendship with the other founders and everything. It was like so
Hmm.
interesting, and I loved it. But that's like the parallel between Jegulus and Salazar and Godric. It's just like one of the favorite things for me. It's just like so well written. I don't know how to explain it, but I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it. But it's not the only like parallelism that you put into your fic, because we also have Patroclus and Achilles in some way. And I
Yeah.
keep thinking of that damn painting.
Yes.
So we need to like discuss it a little bit, not just the painting and everything, but also like Regulus pitch at the end. Like, why did you do that to me?
Yeah, I mean, so I actually have a print of that painting, and when I
Oh,
was writing choices, it was like sitting above my desk. So like every time I was writing, I was staring at the painting. So in a way, like that was part of it. Like it was the inspiration was literally staring me in the face. Um, but sort of what I like doing with fan fiction is playing with the like hero narrative that exists in the kind of original Harry Potter source material.
hmm,
And I felt like that sort of that speech with Regulus at the end, like this idea that like it's sort of like that like the hero shouldn't save the day actually like you're too like somehow you're too good a person to like don't do it like don't do the epic thing like
yeah.
don't put on the cape, don't go to Troy, like not you.
Yeah,
I don't know, like I
it's so
liked
sad.
playing with the like those like traditional narratives. um and I feel like that kind of myth really lets you do that because again it's a question of choices, and like Achilles is given a choice where he can go and fight this war and be uh, infamous, or he can live a long, happy life with the people he loves, and he chooses to go fight the war. And so, yeah,
Yeah, very
that was
Jegulus of
good.
them. No, like I love the speech is so good, but also like very sad. Yeah, it's one of my favorite speeches of all time. I think it should be in a movie.
Oh.
But I cried all my tears to it. So yeah, we don't bring
I
this up.
mean, the funny thing about writing is like I remember like writing that chapter, and obviously the chapters at the end of choices are quite long, so they took me a while, like they took me
Yeah.
longer to write. And I was like, I don't even know if this is sad. Like, because
Oh
I
God.
had read it so many times and edited it, like, that I was like sitting there and I was like, I don't even know, like, is anyone even gonna feel anything? Like, I can't tell anymore.
Oh God. Well, I'm telling you, it is. Um, I was like, I wanted to talk a little bit about also like the growth and the path that these two like main characters take during the story. Um, and in some way, I feel like the love story between them is also a way for them both to grow and develop their character in different ways, of course, for James
Hmm.
and other ways for Regulus. But what do you think? Like, do you think the love story between them is the reason why maybe they have some growth, and for Regulus maybe redemption or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, so I don't think it's like a straight line with them. Like, I don't
Hmm.
think it's like this relationship results in a like clear kind of
Yeah.
upward arc for their characters. I think for James, it definitely, again, I think it develops the character in the sense of like complicating everything that he's supposed to stand for. Like, it's sort of like he is able to play the hero in the lives of like everybody around him until he
Hmm.
meets Regulus, and it's like he can't save he can't save him. Which
Yeah.
again, like I kind of liked that idea in the sense of like it's crazy to think that this 16-year-old boy can like save everybody, like, and
Yeah.
that he is that somehow just through like loving Regulus that he's going to be able to overcome all of the kind of bigger sort of political things that are happening in this space in this world, and it's like no, he can't, like love isn't enough in that way.
Yeah.
um and like I think that's an important thing for James to learn kind of as a character, is that he can't just save the day because that's the right thing to do. I don't know if that makes sense, but just because something is right doesn't mean it's going to happen.
Yeah.
um and the good does not always prevail just because it is good. And then I think for Regulus, uh, you see him. I like in chapter 51, the last time that they kind of meet up. Like that's where you really get this sort of breakthrough with this character who's spent so long being like, I just need to survive. Like it doesn't matter what I do, like what I have to sacrifice or who I have to sacrifice. I just have to be alive. Like I just have to be alive. Like that's the most important thing, which I do think is like a sympathetic point of view again, especially when you're a kid. It's like, yeah, of course you don't want to die. Then you kind of reach
Yeah.
this boiling point in that chapter where James is like, well, was it worth it? Like, and Regulus is like, no, actually, like there are maybe things there are maybe things that matter more, or like than just being than just surviving. Like maybe I need more than just that.
Hmm.
And so then, but then like, then he decides to do the right thing and he dies. So,
Yeah. Wow.
but
Yeah,
so
I think
definitely the relationship does evolve both of those characters, but I don't know if it's necessarily in like a traditional kind of like, it makes them better people. I think it just complicates their characters.
yeah. No, I think for Regulus is like being with James makes him like question everything that he's been taught during like his life.
Yeah.
And that complicates things, of course, because
Yeah.
he cannot just do what he's been told to do, but he has to decide whether he like what side he wants to be on, basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so as you said a couple of times already, they die. And
Yep.
well, that's the canon part of choices. And
Hmm.
so did you like when you so you said that you wanted to write this fic to see if this relationship with these two characters would work out, but did you always plan for it to end this way, so to be canon and stuff?
I always planned for it to be canon.
Mm-hmm.
I think there were a couple moments at the start where I wasn't exactly sure where the story was gonna end. I wasn't sure if I was gonna end it like at the end of their time at Hogwarts or if I was gonna continue it on afterwards. Um, and then there was also like I've talked to people about this before, but like there was a moment way early on where I like finished chapter 4, which I think is like when they first kiss, and I went, I don't actually know if I have enough to keep writing the story. Like I was like, I don't know what happens now actually. And then I ended up going on and finishing it, but there was a moment where I was like, maybe it just stops here. But it
No.
always was supposed to be canon. So like in this universe they always die, I guess, regardless
Yeah.
of whether I wrote it or not.
Yeah. No, I understand it. But since we're talking about it, let me skip a few questions just to ask you. So I know there is another, like, I don't know if I can call it like a sequel that you wrote, but it's not
Hmm.
finished, right?
Yeah.
It's chosen, I think. But it's about the other people. But if I mean, if Regulus didn't have to die, and he could have come back and kept his promises that he made to James, um, what would you think would have happened then? Like, did
I,
you ever plan on like thinking about it or?
I think it's a like it's kind of a well it's kind of an impossible question for me to answer because I think for me like that just can't happen in this story. Like it's just then it would be a different story. Like I'd have to write a different story if that makes sense. Like for me in this world, in this universe of choices, like this was how it that this was just like what was going to happen with these characters. So it's hard for me to be like if he survives and he comes back because there's a bit of me that's like that's just it's a different story. Like I have to write a different story that like if that makes sense. I can't think about that in terms of this universe
Hmm.
because I'm like he just doesn't and they just don't. And there's but like I mean it wouldn't be good because uh, yeah, I don't know. I don't think it would be good. Because too
Yeah.
much has happened and James has thought nothing through and so I don't know.
Would you would you describe not Jegulus, but like James as a impulsive person?
Impulsive, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think he absolutely is like, it's heart first, right? So he just feels things and he acts on them. And his intentions are usually good, but, that doesn't mean that like his actions are always correct.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, it does some pretty questionable things, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to talk about this, but it's one thing, it's the one thing that threw me off while I was reading Choices. And it's the cheating thing.
hmm
I was like,
I,
is it okay for you to talk about this?
yeah, we could talk about it.
Okay. It's the thing that for me, like when I was reading it, like I loved James from page one. Okay. It's also like
hmm
one like the first fic that I've ever read with James's POV,
hmm
So I was like, oh my God, I love this character so much. And I appreciate everything that he like chooses to do or not to do because he is like developing with it. And then he does this, and I'm like, not my James. What have you done? But I understand for the purposes of the story that this was bound to happen in some way, just
hmm
because he was like always in love with Regulus, and then they were torn apart because of circumstances and the war and Regulus's wrong choices.
Yeah.
And then it didn't like necessarily fall out of love. It just had to like go on with his life while he could not be with Regulus anymore. And he always had this huge crush on Lily, which he had been developing for years, basically.
hmm
And now, like, he can't be with her. So, I mean, what is he supposed to do? Like, like he has to go on with his life, and he still loves Lily. So he goes like and be like he is gonna be with her, and then Regulus like pops up again, and then
Yeah.
like I understand why he acts the way he acts. That was so tough for me to like digest.
I
um just because she's pregnant as well.
I know.
So
Well, I mean, I think it's like I again like part of me is like I think that it's good that it's hard to because it's a similar thing of it's like it gets messy. Like what is the right thing to do and like what is the wrong thing to do and he's just like a person, he's just like a kid in these extreme circumstances. And I think that people uh do the wrong things sometimes, but
mhm.
that doesn't make them inherently bad people. Like, I don't know, I find that moment I like you kind of said, but like I find that moment very like understandable. Like it can be understandable and you can be like objectively you shouldn't have done that. But like I kind of feel like in that situation like he loves both of these people very much. And I think, I don't
Yeah.
know, James is like, Regulus is in so much pain. Like, he's in so much pain that he just doesn't want him to be alone and he doesn't want him to be in pain. And it's like I don't know, like what is the right decision there? Like you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like yes, it's like it's wrong and it's right, but like but so like he just I don't mind it. Like I don't mind him doing something where we're like, well, I don't know if that was the right thing to do, but I think it was the human thing. Like I think he's just like
Yeah.
he
No, no,
just
no. Yeah.
and you know, he stops and he's like this isn't fair to you and it's not fair to her.
Yeah.
And then yeah, like so
The fact that
but I know
Regulus
people have
agrees to this.
yeah. Well, I think again, this is where it's like it's all insane. Like I've had people who are constantly like, "Well, what is he thinking?" And I'm like, "He's not thinking." Like none of them are thinking. It's like they're in this very scary, stressful situation and it's just like I just want you to be safe.
Yeah.
And it's like that's it. That's the only thought I have. It's not strategic. James isn't like, "Okay, I have this plan for how this is going to work." Like no, he's just like you can't stay here. Like obviously you can't be here. So you have to
Well,
leave.
yeah. No, it was stressful for me, so I can't imagine how stressful it was for them. But yeah. No, I get it. It was just like, this was one of the things that was like, mm, I don't know, when someone doesn't like choices, is like one of the things they bring up, basically. And I've
Yeah.
tried to defend them in ways you cannot imagine. Like always defending James.
I mean,
But
I think people
yeah,
want different things from stories, and again, I feel like James is a character who's supposed to be the moral, whatever,
yeah,
the moral kind of authority in this universe. And so the idea that he's doing things that people feel like are immoral,
yeah,
I think some people find that extremely upsetting. And I
yeah,
also think that like I do spend the last chapter, like we spend a lot of time with James and Lily dealing with this. Like it's not like it happens and then there's no repercussions, like which I is how I feel like it's sometimes talked about, where they're like, and
hmm
then Lily just forgives him, and I'm like, no, they spent literal years in therapy actually dealing with this.
yeah. No, I feel like, I mean, they die very, very short after,
Yes, they
but
die.
but no, I like, so when I try to not explain, but like kind of like defend this thing about James to other people that I've been talking to, I was like, this is the one choice that actually makes him human, you know?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
because we've, okay, so there are some things that he does that are perceived as wrong by himself, and he
Hmm.
like criticizes himself like for them, like, and like, oh no, I'm not perfect. People are used to me being perfect, and now what am I gonna do? But then those choices that it does, like in previous parts of the story, um, are likely like making me love him more for what he is, basically. And this is the
Hmm.
only actual choice that I can criticize. Like I'm like,
Hmm.
um, yeah, and this makes him feel more human to me as a
Yeah,
reader, you know?
yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I understand it. So, how long did you like did it take you to write choices? Like monthly wise?
Well, I was posting it while I was writing it because I
Yeah.
don't have any patience, so I don't like write things ahead of time, which like is makes more sense, but I just like can't do it. I think it did it take me a year to write choices? 2 years? Oh, wait, no, it took a year,
Oh.
maybe. I think choices is the one that I was like the most consistent with. And I was updating pretty regularly until the end, but then only because those chapters got so long. Like I think like chapter 55 is like 150 pages or something, and that took me like a month to write because it was so long. Um, like I think when I'm writing consistently, I like a year makes sense, though it is like 3 books when people bind
Yeah.
it. So that's like 3 books. It
Yeah.
must have been a little bit more than a year, like a year and a
Hmm.
half or something.
Yeah.
My ideal is trying to update stories weekly. which I did with choices for like most of the time that I was writing it. It was either weekly or bi-weekly. Right now, I'm not doing as well on that front because I'm just busy with other things. Um, but yeah, it was like a while. Like there was a solid period of time where because it was so consistent, it was like having a part-time job basically. Like if I
Oh.
wasn't at school or at my actual job, I was like constantly writing and editing it and posting it, which like is a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, but I get it's such a hard work for writers and like usually like authors in general, but like also like fics writers because you don't get anything like in return for the time you spend writing it except the response of the audience, you know. But
hmm
that's not a like a life like you cannot make a life out of it. So
Yes.
yeah. So I understand like why like it takes so much out of people to write fics because sometimes they're so fucking long. I mean,
Yeah.
everything's so long. I've read also like other stuff that were pretty much like longer than life. And it took a lot for me. Like I've read once a fic, and I started like reading it in February, I think, and I finished just like it was already all published, but I just like took me very long to read it, and I finished in June.
Oh
Like
wow.
no, like it's like okay, it's crazy for me, but like for choices, even if it's very long, it took me like 2 days, and then I just had to wait for like the last three chapters and the epilogue or something like that. So it was
hmm
not finished, but yeah, I was like, I could not stop reading it. So I was like, let but I understand like how like consuming it is, for writers. So we appreciate your work.
Oh, thank you.
Um, so do you think there was like a part of writing choices that was like harder for you, or like complex, in the fic? And what was the part that you liked writing the most? So the
Um,
hardest and the most, I don't know, the one you liked the most.
I'm trying to think of hardest. Like again, I think the last chapter, uh, chapter 55, not the epilogue. Because it was like it was so long and there was so much that I had to kind of try to like it's the end, but like it's a bit of a weird ending to a story because one of the main characters is dead and like so like trying to get out everything that I was trying to get out, but like still make it satisfying for the reader. Yeah, like that one was a bit hard. In general, anything that involves fighting, I hate. Fight scenes are super difficult to write. So like I think there's the fight in the ministry with where when Evan dies. I hated writing that. It
Yeah.
took me so long for no reason. Like I was like, you have to like describe it's like finding a way to describe the actions enough that people know what's going on, but not too much that it's boring. And there's like, I was like, no, I don't want to do this. Um, but then I have a couple ones that I really liked. The prank is big for me because it was one of the things when I started writing choices that I really wanted to get a chance to tackle and deal with, especially to have it written from James's point of view because it's usually so focused on Wolfstar that having like getting his point of view and like also like his relationship with Sirius being so much more a focus of like that event was something I really was excited to write and really enjoyed writing. I also really like the chapter with Remus's mom's funeral. That was really fun to write. Um, and then in the one of my favorite scenes, which is like such a random scene, is in that last chapter again, and it's when James and Lily are fighting about going to therapy. I don't know. I think just it was one of those moments that like just made them feel so real to me. I don't know, like I just really enjoyed getting to write their relationship in that way, I guess, like kind of more mature and like trying to handle these
Yeah.
difficult things. It was just like it was fun for me, I guess. Even though it's not a fun moment.
No, no, of course not. But I think for me, like my favorite parts are like very random parts, but like of course there is the first kiss. That was one,
Mm.
like it was very like fun to me because they were drunk and it was so soon. Like it's a very long fic, but that was very fast paced. Um,
Yeah.
page 80 or something. And that was so fun and I love that. And then I love the Quidditch match when I think Regulus is like trying to tell James that he believes in him or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
That was very, very nice to read and made me feel some kind of way.
Yeah.
And I love the sad parts, like I cannot escape it. I just love crying. I don't know. But yeah, and also like they're very, very well written. I don't think I've ever cried to fic this much. And I've read Art Ice Baby, okay?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if you actually read other fics, do you?
I do read other fics, but I find Jegulus fics hard and like maybe Marauders in general, just because I have such a strong sense of like who those characters are
Yeah.
in my head. And not in like I think the best thing about this space is that we all have different interpretations and we're telling different stories. Like I think that's really good. It's just that for some reason like if I read a fic and someone's interpretation of them is like different, like way different from mine, I'm like, I can't read it.
Yeah.
But not because it's not good, it's just like, I'm like, I can't get into it. Whereas I find like dreary fics way easier because for some reason I'm way more like, those two characters can kind of be anybody. And I'm like, yeah, I buy it.
No, this might sound strange to people watching this, people that know me, but like I've never read a dreary fic before, like not yet. I'm planning to, but
Mhm.
don't know why, but like never occurred to me to read one. It's something that I've been wanting to do for a while, actually, like since last year probably, but like I never have time and I tend to read a lot of actual books, you know? So
Yeah.
when I don't know what to read, I go back to fics and I usually stick to the Marauders just because they feel like
Yeah,
family,
yeah,
like
yeah.
home. And so I've tried to find some fics that include both the Marauders and Drary because I know there are some.
Hmm.
And I've noted them down. So I'm planning on entering the fandom as well. I've never read, like, I'm not even into Dramione, whatever. I've never read anything of the Gold,
No.
never. And I don't know why I started reading Marauders mix. It just happened, I guess. But it's like a black hole and you never get out of it.
Yes. Well, I think the nice thing about the Marauders fix is that they're so like full. Like it's about the like friendship and
Yeah.
like found family as much as about anything else versus like I think Drary is like kind of more I don't know, like it's like more traditional fan fiction in a sense that it's very much about those two characters most of the time. But I always say like Drary is just like Jegulus but with a happy ending. Like if you want a happy ending, that's it's like the same dynamic, just they don't die. I mean, they can die, obviously, if somebody wants to write it that way, but
I will be careful to read the warnings before. No, I will read one of those. I have to because then like I have to just like something that will have to happen at some point. Time and the will to and the will also to like distance myself from the Marauders for a little bit of time. It will happen, I'm sure. I don't know when. Yeah, but like it helps that there are some fics that include both the Marauders and
yeah.
I will probably start from those. But yeah, I love the found family and Marauders, and I feel like so coming from me, like as I said before, I've read All the Dudes, and that was the only fic that I've ever read before Choices. So like after
Mhm.
Choices, I started this new path that led me only to Jegulus fics. Just cannot escape it. I've tried other Wolfstar things, but I feel like I feel more represented in the Jegulus dynamic. I don't know why.
Mhm.
Of the enemies to lovers, whatever that is.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of myself in Regulus. This like not that either stuff, but whatever.
But yes, no, no, I know.
And so like I empathize a lot with him. So I have like he has to be a character in what I read. And when he's
Right.
not present, it's just like hard for me to empathize with other characters. I don't know why. And so I've read other Wolfstar things, but just, it was never the same thing for me.
Right.
And that was all your fault because it started with choices, I never needed this before. And then I'm ruined forever. But but yeah. So the like even with Wolfstar fix, I feel like the marauders give a lot of insight of like the found family thing that we don't have in other fix. And
Mhm.
my favorite trope, basically, so I tend to try and find it in books usually, like not only fics. So I think this is the like reason why I'm stuck in this fandom forever. It just
Yeah.
gave me what I needed.
Yep.
Yeah, and I love the fact that in choices, we see everything from James' perspective that we don't have in like Wolfstar fics normally because it's just like
Mhm.
Sirius or Remus usually. And I feel like also we see a lot more of like Pronksfoot, which
Yes. Yeah.
I love it. It's just like one of my favorite friendships ever. And I feel like through James' eyes, we see Sirius in a different light, and it's wonderful. Like I love it. It's just like crazy like how much they love each other as
Yeah.
basically and brothers, whatever. Um, but yeah, and in choices we also have Regulus's perspective that sees Sirius in another way as well.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I feel like it's very interesting to see both perspectives, and it's kind of I don't know, seeing a character with different eyes for the first time kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's so cool. But as I said, through Regulus's eyes, we see Sirius in a very different way. Specifically, like during most of choices, I think they still not in a good relationship as brothers.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you like to talk a little bit about the Black brothers, just because they're like a dynamic that I care about a lot, and
Mhm.
me and a lot of people I think love this two brothers. So let's talk a little bit about it.
I think that like sibling relationships are just like generally super fascinating. Um, and that there's this I mean, they can take like obviously a million different like forms, but I think there's occasionally something with like your siblings who like they can drive you crazy in a way that like nobody else can. And I think that part of that comes from this frustration that like how can we have grown up in the same house and experienced the same things and feel completely differently. And I think you see that a lot, or like when I write them anyways, that's a lot how I write Sirius and Regulus. Like Sirius is like, because yeah, Sirius is unfair to Regulus, but I feel like a lot of the time you are like, because of the dynamic of siblings, like, yeah, you are a little bit unfair to them sometimes because you're like, why don't you just get this? Like, why? Like, you're driving me crazy. Like, I just need you to like grow up and
Yeah.
handle this. And I think with Sirius, there's a bit of him that's like, like I don't have that much sympathy for you. Like I experienced the same things you experienced, and I know that they're wrong, and I got myself out. And like, I'm not really interested in listening to you sit around and talk about like how there's nothing you can do because I know that there's something that you can do. And
Yeah.
I think then with Regulus, you get the opposite perspective of it being like we're not the same person and we haven't experienced the exact same things. Um, and like I can't like I mean, Regulus very clearly doesn't have the support system that Sirius has.
Yeah.
Um,
He's like alone.
he's
Whatever.
alone.
Yeah.
And I think like that's a big thing, but they also are just different people. Like Sirius, I think for whether he meets James Potter or doesn't meet James Potter is always going to be more combative. And Regulus isn't like that. And I
Yeah.
think this is a constant tension in their relationship of neither of them ever really being able to see the other side because they're like, like you should know. You should know that this is the right way to handle this. And the other one is like, no, you should know that this is the right way to handle this.
Yeah. Yeah. There it's just like very destructive for their sibling dynamic, you know. And I
Yeah.
yeah, also like towards there was like a very, very beautiful part of the Black Brothers in Choices that I appreciated a lot. And it was just before Regulus died and Sirius started having like dreams about him. And that was very, very sad for me. But I loved
Yeah.
it. And then the way he also dreams, like when actually like Regulus dies. And I feel like in his dreams, Sirius can finally be the child version of him that was him when he was still with Regulus in the house. And
Yeah.
I feel like it's kind of like if like the moment Sirius had to leave and had to go to James' house, he had to leave that side of himself behind as well, not just Regulus.
Hmm.
That kind of like broke everything for him and inside of him, and that's so fucking sad. But I feel like despite of all the hatred and all the resentment and everything, there's always gonna be like love between them just because they're not very
Yeah.
It's just
Those dreams were like, I can't, because like the thing about canon is that like that relationship is always going to feel a little bit unresolved because it is unresolved.
yeah.
And I just couldn't see any way that in a in a normal situation, in like reality, if when they're face to face, I think they're both too stubborn in a way, like they're never gonna see eye to eye, like neither of them is gonna give ground, but in a dream, that's when it feels a little less, I think, like surrender to Sirius or to either of them. I think it had to happen in this kind of
Yeah.
not quite real space. And then Sirius is able to be like softer.
Yeah.
But in with everything happening in real life, there's just too much anger with them and there's no time for them to work through it.
No, that's true. Yeah. Also, I think that's what happened in canon. Like, they could have, made things better for themselves, but that just didn't happen. And one of them went and died. So,
Yeah.
but the dreams, like the part of the dreams, was like very, very cool. And I feel like that was what the story needed to actually give some, like, pass me the term, closure to
Yeah.
so yeah. Also, since we discussed it, we talked about this before, like the sequel thing that are you still writing it, or
I am gonna get back to it, but it
okay,
is kind of
perfect.
it is on hold at the moment
No, yeah, I
while I
haven't.
finish some other things.
No, I haven't read it yet, just because lately I don't like starting things that are not finished, just just
Hmm.
amazing. And I seen that it's not finished. So I was like, okay, I'll get back to it when it's finished.
Yeah.
And so I have no idea what it is about and what these other characters do. Do they keep following canon? Is it about the 12 years in Azkaban thing or something else? What can you tell us about it?
So it's kind of both. It's sort of focusing more on um, Remus and Sirius, though you are going to see other characters are going to come in. Right now, the way that it's structured is you're getting two timelines. So sort of the chapters are alternating between Remus's perspective and Sirius's perspective, but then in each chapter you're getting two timelines. One timeline is following like immediately after the deaths of James and Lily, and then the other timeline is kind of following the events like of Prisoner of Azkaban. So you're flipping back and forth. You're getting both kind of um like, you know,
Yeah.
Sirius going into Azkaban and Sirius escaping Azkaban.
Okay. Wow, that's gonna be intense.
Yeah, it's a little intense.
Are you planning it to be long or?
I don't know, we'll see. I think probably not as long as Choices, but I think like I would assume somewhere between like 20 to 30 chapters.
Okay, yeah. Okay, that's interesting. Good to know. And so this is a very hard question for me. Um, we need to discuss the epilogue. Just because. So as I told you, I read it the day that it came out because it was like
Mhm.
I was reading Choices and I finished it before it was finished. So I kept on going on as you published the chapters. And then I came back from my Erasmus and I was back home and I was like, it's the day the epilogue gets published. I read it like right after. And I was a bit like, I don't know how to explain my feelings about it. What do you like? How do you feel about this epilogue? Like, I feel like a lot of things happen in this epilogue, and some things are just like, mm, I don't know. I would have done them differently. I'm not the author, of course, so I have no saying in this, but it kind of like threw me off in some parts. It's it's like it still follows the James cheater thing. Like, okay. And then like also the part in which like Regulus gets, I don't know if it's a spoiler, I can say this, but like, yeah, guys, spoiler alert. Um, Regulus gets invited to the table with like James's parents and everybody else, and
Mhm.
he doesn't even have to apologize for what he did, but I feel like he should have, and maybe he too feels like that way. But I wanted to ask you, like, why did you decide to like, I don't know, like act out this kind of epilogue? It could have been like, I don't know, the epilogue could have been just a sequel, like, you know, like people after the death of James and Regulus, but you decided to like do it, and is it afterlife or something like that? And like,
Yeah.
yeah.
So it's kind of not like it's not a reality. Like it's so like it's interesting like the idea that like James is cheating. Like he's not alive. Like it's
I
not
know, I
like
know.
like these things aren't really happening. This is my thing or like they are and they aren't. Like it was sort of meant to be way more. So like that's the same thing of like this idea that like Regulus gets invited to the table, so like he should apologize, but it's like but they're not like really eating dinner. Like they're not like really sitting like it's like the table is a metaphor. Like they're
Yeah.
not really in this garden. And like I get it, like it's written like they are, but also there are bits of like in my head, I guess, is more like the idea that like when someone dies, like their life flashes before their eyes or something like that. And it's like sort of playing with that idea of like there's these memories and these feelings and these imprints of people, and they're sort of swirling around, and like the ether, and you're getting just like flashes of like
That's
of
better.
like the imprints of those feelings. It's not like these things are really happening. If that makes sense. Like I don't want to say that yeah, they're not really in these places. Like it's just like it's like the energy of them, the ghosts, the
Oh,
like essence of them just kind of coming together and falling apart and coming together and falling apart.
but this is better. Why? It's so sad. But yeah, thank you for explaining that to me. Like sometimes when I have to like talk to others, I feel like there is some things in stories that I cannot comprehend unless it gets explained by the person that has written it. And this is why I wanted to ask you. So that makes much more sense to me, explained this way that you just did. But it's also so much sadder. Okay. I could imagine them in paradise, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, like to me it's not like a heaven. Like I don't think about it like that way. Like they're not, yeah, again, I'm just repeating myself, but it's like it's more I was kind of trying to play around with this idea of like yeah, like memories and feelings and energies and essence, but not actually
Yeah.
people and places.
No, yeah, that makes much more sense because when you think about it, the parts in which James is with Regulus and the parts in which he's with Lily kind of like overstep each other.
Yes.
Like they're at the same time basically, and I
Yeah,
couldn't
exactly.
figure out how that was happening. But yeah, that makes sense now. Thank you. So let's say people that have not read Choices want to read it. Is there a way that you would describe James and Regulus, like their characters? Like if you had to like present them, introduce them to someone, what would you say?
So I love these characters. So like one of the magical parts of like writing this story was being able to like it's like the closest you can get, right? To
Yeah.
being in their heads or like to like it's the closest you can get to a fictional character is to write them. So like that was super fun and super exciting for me. I mean, I always think of James as like he is like such a comfort character. Um because he loves so deeply and so what is it unconditionally. I think James Potter is like literally like he literally loves unconditionally, and that's like another thing that I kind of am exploring in this story is that like that's not necessarily always a good thing. Like sometimes there should be conditions actually but
Yeah.
like he's so he's so heart first and he's so impulsive and it also like so warm and so bright. Um, but I also think and this gets lost a little bit with Jegulus sometimes, is like that he has this kind of mischievous side. Like there is this element of him that's a bit, that isn't just like soft, I guess if that makes sense. Like he he can easily be enticed into causing trouble. Like I kind of love him and Sirius for that reason that like that they both have a bit of a bite to them. Um uh yeah, and Regulus is super fun for me to write because he's such a internal character.
I was
Like
gonna
so
say,
much
yeah. I was gonna say, such a bitch.
he's such a bitch. Yeah, well that too. Like but he's so much is happening inside his head and he's so aware of kind of the situations around him. There's something about that that's like super interesting to write and he's like obsessed with control and James like and that's why they're kind of fun to throw together because James has no control. Like
Yeah.
um and like those two people like it's like they shouldn't be together, but like they are. They just bring out so much in each other. It's just fun. They're fun dynamics to play with. Um,
No, I love them so much. It's just like, yeah. Also,
and I
like,
also think that,
no,
sorry.
no, you go ahead.
I think that the other thing that's interesting about them is they're two characters who have they're very clear moral codes, like but their own moral codes. Like I think James is kind of like you do the right thing no matter what. Like whatever you've decided the right thing is, and I think most of the time he thinks he knows. Um, it's like it doesn't matter like how scary it is or how dangerous it is or like what you could lose, like you always do the right thing. And I think with Regulus it's very much like you protect what you have. Like Regulus will cross any line to protect the people that he loves, but he won't do anything just for the greater good, if that makes sense. Like he's not gonna sacrifice himself to like rescue a kitten on train tracks. I don't know why that's the example I'm using, but like James would do that because that's just the right thing to do. It doesn't matter that he's risking his life. But Regulus is like, that's not my cat.
No, true. But I was wondering that because you said that you started writing this fic after you've seen like this dynamic, this relationship brought up on like internet without actually understanding it, basically. So you want to see if they could work out. But like, so you've never read Jegulus before like writing this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, no, I hadn't really read them before, no.
yeah, so how did you like characterize them? Like you know, it's like I feel like every Jegulus that I've read has some like similar characteristics. Like they have very specific character details that are repeated in every fic, you know, like Regulus is this way and like James is this other way, and it's like this dynamic that is created between them just because of how different they are from each other. And so how did you like without ever like reading about them, how did you decide which characteristics they had to have?
Like obviously I'd read a lot of James already, so that was pretty easy. Regulus I didn't have any, I don't think I really had anything to go off of. But like I kind of like that best anyways because and that happens with me a lot, honestly. But I think so kind of like what I said earlier, I think certain things happen like for the dynamic of Jegulus, James kind of becomes a bit cleaner in a way because I think lots of like I always think one of the things about shipping is less about like, oh, these two characters obviously are in love, and it's more about what happens to these two characters if you put them in a relationship with each other. Like what different characteristics do they bring out in each other, and like what different stories can you tell with this relationship? And I think, you know, when you write James in the context of Julie, a lot of the times he's much more of a like kind of like bad boy. And then when you write James in the context of Jegulus, a lot of the times he's a lot more of a good boy. And I think it's just because like that pairing brings it out in him. So I think to some extent, like when I was writing James, I sort of was emphasizing those characteristics of him more than I was emphasizing kind of the like, you know, teen bully troublemaker, because it feels like that's what this pairing needed. And for Regulus, it was like kind of you're trying to write somebody who you believe, who you can empathize with and believe that he's staying in the situation that he's in.
Yeah.
Like in a way that's like sympathetic. Like so I was kind of trying to figure out like what kind of person is making these choices again in a way that somebody could understand and empathize with, even if you're like, I wish that you weren't doing this, like I wish you were making different choices. And I guess I kind of so that was sort of how I was attempting to like to figure out
Yeah.
his personality was, it's like a lot of fear and anxiety, no hope for the future, no belief in himself. He has no belief in himself and he has no belief in other people. Like I think Sirius too, like has uh he has faith in James. Like he has faith in Remus. He has faith in something
Yeah.
else. And I don't think that Remus, I don't think that Regulus really is not an optimist. Like he does not believe that things are going to work out. He does not believe that like if you take a risk, it's going to pay off. He believes that like more times than not, like things are out to get you and things will go wrong. And he moves through the world in that kind of headspace, constantly expecting to be attacked and constantly expecting to, kind of have to like be on the defensive.
Yeah.
And I think that really impacts. And then versus James, who's like the opposite of that, is just like so open-hearted and just like welcomes everything in, and Regulus, who's just so closed off. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But I would say like one of the interesting things for me, like having like written choices before there was a whole lot of like
Yeah.
Jegulus content, is like as the characters that have kind of been filled out around them, like when I was writing it, I have like Barty and Evan are his friends, right? And
Yeah.
I chose those names mostly randomly, like they just like were other Death Eaters that are mentioned.
Yeah.
And I had never read any characterizations of them whatsoever. And so like obviously in choices they're
Yeah.
horrible because they're
Yeah.
supposed to be. Um, but then like afterwards, like they become like fandom favorites, right? And obviously
Yeah.
now it's really jarring for people to go back and read choices and they're like, whoa, like
Yeah.
what is happening with these characters who we've now come to love? And I was like, I didn't even think about, like I didn't have any concept of those characters at the time that I was writing
Yeah.
this fan fiction.
Also, like unrelated, but I love your characterization of like Rose Killer in Kill Your Darlings. I've read that one
Oh,
as
thanks.
well.
But you see, like, there was a
Yeah.
shift between finishing choices and like, and obviously KOD is like alternative universe
Yeah.
college hockey stories, so like way different. But but by that point, people were like, we want to see these characters, which was like, I remember being so weird to me. Like I was like, when did that happen? Like that was such a weird. And
Like,
now they're staples. They come up in every fic, right?
yeah. Yeah, they're always there. And also like I feel like there are like a lot of chapters as well just for them, and it's cool
Yeah.
to see them as well. Just because they're very close friends of Regulus, and just like I feel like they're also important. So, but yeah, but
Yeah.
when I read choices, for me it was normal for them to be the way they are in choices. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think they should be like I'm happy with the way that they're written, but I do often like it is just like thinking about like the mindset that I had going into it. I wasn't like, oh yeah, Barty and Evan. Like they meant nothing to me. Like they were just like random names. Evan Rosier, like I don't think I like obviously Barty plays
Yeah.
a role in the original books, but like that was definitely I Googled like
Yeah.
names of Death Eaters.
Yeah.
Randomly was like that one.
But in some way, I feel like even in choices, when Evan dies, it's sad.
I
Like,
know, I know.
yeah. Also because they're Regulus friends more than anything else, you know. But yeah.
Well, he's definitely the more likable of.
Yeah. Yeah, true. I kind of wanted to punch Barty in some
Well,
parts.
yeah. He's horrible.
Yeah. Evan was like kind of like middle ground or something. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Honestly,
Also, like,
Evan is kind of still the same in Rose Killer Fix.
yeah, true. Yeah. No, I've read a couple actually, like just because the thrill of it. I don't
Yeah.
know. It's like it's different than Jegulus, and I wanted to like dive into it a little bit. And yeah, I mean, I feel like I love the way
they're usually characterized as Barty being like the crazy one, and like not crazy, but like you know what I mean, just like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
intense person. um,
Yeah.
and Evan is like the same, but like less intense and more like he does what Barty wants him to do, basically, or like follows
Mm-hmm.
everywhere. And it's just like a very cool dynamic. I love when they don't understand they're in love with each other. Kind of. But yeah, and like since we're talking about them, this is not like a planned question, just came to my mind. Uh, if that's okay with you.
Mm-hmm.
You like what happened when like you had to make Regulus cover up for Barty, like Barty's actions with Mary, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why? Like that was like I think that was the worst thing that Regulus did for me in choice,
Mm-hmm.
I think. And I know he killed people, but that's another
I
story.
know, yeah. Yeah. Well,
Um,
it was
yeah,
again like one of those moments where I kind of wanted to um like I guess there's a bit of like I don't want to make it like I don't think everything has to be super serious. Obviously, like Choices does deal with serious things, but I try not to be too like I mean, this is fan fiction and I think people can write what they want. But I was trying to kind of approach this idea that like I didn't love the idea that like you could be a Death Eater and still be a good person, if that makes sense. Like I feel a lot of the times these characters will be taken and it's like, yes, he was a Death Eater, but like he wasn't like he didn't do anything bad. And you see that even with the like original story with Snape. It's like, yeah, he was a Death Eater, but we never talk about like what he must have been doing while he was part of this like
yeah,
horrible group. We just sort of skip over that. And I kind of wanted to be like, no, like to be with these people, to be in this group, to you're he does not have a good set of morals. Like he doesn't. And I tried to still write it again, like because I think the story falls apart if you're just like Regulus is irredeemable and horrible and I want nothing to do with him. Like I tried to make sure that there was still complexity there. Like he's not heartless, but
yeah,
you know, he is willing to sacrifice other people
yeah,
um to for himself. Like um and so I yeah, and again I try to like one of the things I like about having multiple points of view is like I tried to make sure that we get Mary's perspective and we get Lily's perspective on Regulus because I think that they're important perspectives to have. And both of them are like, no, he's irredeemable.
yeah,
And I don't think that they're wrong. I think they're coming at it from, it's like from their point of view. Like,
yes,
he's irredeemable. And then you have James who is coming at it from a different perspective and is like, you know, like that scene that happens between him and Lily, where Lily is like, I don't think Regulus was a good person. And James is
yeah,
like, no, but he wanted to be. And I think that counts. And Lily doesn't push him on it, but she's like, I don't think it does. And I think that, like, I wasn't trying to say that one of those points is right and one of those points is wrong. I think they're both right. Like,
yeah.
some people can forgive him and some people can't. I think that's just how life works. Like, so that was like, I was trying to just, I wanted it to be complicated,
Yeah,
I
no, no,
guess.
I get it. No, like for me, like as I interpreted it and I try to give sense to it for me and my beliefs, I was like, maybe that's like Regulus does this really, really bad thing just because that's the only way he can protect his friend, even though
Yeah.
I feel like he's aware that what he did, like what Barty did was wrong, you know? Like I
Yeah.
feel like it's not that I feel like he's aware. He's aware because like it states it in some way, and also for what
Yeah.
happened with like himself before, so like he knows it's wrong and he feels bad for what he does, but like that's the only thing he can do to like protect Barty, which is his friend again. So that's how I justified it basically in some way. Like it's not
Yeah.
justifiable, but like you know what I mean. um
Yeah. It's like understanding it, like understanding why he's doing what he's doing versus being like, what he's doing is the right thing to do.
yeah,
It's just like, I mean, I think Regulus is dealing with so much. Like he's trying to protect Barty, his friend, but he's also a bit like he feels very isolated. And it's like the only allies he has are in his mind, in this dangerous space that he's in, are Evan and Barty. So it's like if he loses Barty, he is down. He's down an ally, and that's a scary thing for him. And I think he's also not really processing his own trauma. And that is affecting his ability to kind of deal with the situation. And I tried to make sure that like it sticks with him forever. Like again, even up until chapter 51, like they're still dealing with the aftermath of that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, makes sense to me. But since we're already talking about Regulus's friends, I want to like actually ask you, like this is a genuine like curiosity of mine, like how like Cersei, like Cersei Greengrass, right? She's a very important character, as I perceived it. She is Regulus's kind of, I don't want to say best friend because like he has other best friends, but like
she's probably his most genuine friend.
yeah,
Like
yeah. And she doesn't arrive like at the beginning, but like she arrives and she's like very important to him, and they go on like adventures together at some point. But like I was wondering if like how did you come up with this character, because I don't think it's like a canon character. And I've heard of her just in your fix. I think
yeah,
she's in Kill Your Darlings as well, I think.
she is. Yeah, she's kind of become my little like I just like throw her into all of my stories
Yeah.
now. She's kind of like my I don't know what to call it, like my like signature character, like my little like she's my Easter egg, I guess.
Yeah, you could say she's your Grant. I don't know if you've read that.
Yes, yeah. She's my grand for sure.
So is she supposed to like be the same character that Pandora is supposed to be? Or like why did you not put Pandora in your stories?
Yeah, so I just like did not know about Pandora.
Oh, oh,
And
yeah,
then I did, and I think that she's like I didn't make her being like she is my Pandora, but I feel like so like the reason that Cersei shows up is because I got to this point in the story and I was like, if Regulus doesn't have somebody, like this
yeah,
character is just gonna fall apart. Like I needed to give him something, or I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna hold him together long enough to like get him to the end of this story. And so then I was like, okay, I'm gonna give him this friend. And I sort of feel like the fandom kind of feels that way in general, like, and was like, Regulus needs somebody who's not awful, and it's like Pandora has become that person, but I just like wasn't aware. Like, I don't think she was as big when I was writing it, so like I just made up my own character. But she's definitely filling, I think, the same role that
yeah.
Pandora usually fills.
Yeah, like for me, when I read choices, I never read about Pandora before, just because never read the Jegulus fic before, and so Regulus is not a big thing. Thing is, I didn't know that Cersei was supposed to fill the same role Pandora was supposed to fill in other fics, and for me, it felt very natural what like Cersei's character did in the story and role in it. So when I then found out about like Pandora as, you know, they call her basically like Regulus's platonic relationship, whatever it is, besties, whatever. It felt like I wonder like myself, like why did she put like Cersei in it and not Pandora? That's actually like a real character. But like as you said, you didn't know about it, so that's cool to know. But I feel like it's very natural the way they are like interchangeable kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's so cool. Yeah. But I feel like it's cool to have, but I feel like everyone understands the way Regulus actually needed like a friend, and
yeah.
and I feel like it's very cool to know that it came naturally to you to write about a person that it's actually already there in other fics, but you didn't know about it, so like you created it, and it's just like it's gonna fill up the same role. It's cool, or you know, like,
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Also, since Cersei is involved in this moment as well, let's talk about when James meets Arya after Regulus's death, and
Hmm.
they exchange a very weird encounter. And I wanted to punch Arya, but
Yeah, yeah. So
very
does James.
yeah. I feel like also I think that's when Cersei gives him Regulus's letter, I think.
Yeah.
And
It's like right after that, yeah.
yeah. And yeah, like, can you just like explain to us this moment? Like, I I feel like I don't know. I thought that maybe with Regulus's death, Aryan could also change a little bit. Also unfair that Regulus has to die like before him. Whatever.
Yes, yeah.
So like
Um,
talk about it.
yeah, I feel like um yeah, cause Regulus is so close to his dad, I
Yeah.
kind of I liked playing around with Orion because it's like Helberga is so cut and dry awful. And I
Yeah.
actually find that and I try and give her some depth too because like she loves her husband or whatever, but like that's way less compelling to me than someone like Orion who is like he's like on the surface a good dad, you know what I mean? You see him in those moments with Regulus and he's
Regulus.
very
Yeah.
kind and warm and he asks about Sirius and you can see why like that was another thing where I was like, you know, fear is a good motivator for people to do things, but so is love. And so it's like Regulus is staying in this house out of fear and he's also staying in this house out of love.
Yeah.
Um, and it's like another point of contention between him and Sirius, where Regulus is like, you know, like he loves you, and Sirius is like, that really doesn't mean anything. Like that really doesn't mean anything. Um, and it doesn't. You know, like Orion never protects them, and he doesn't stand up for them.
Yeah.
Um, and I kind of, I wanted to have that stay that way, just to show that there's different kinds of people can be I guess like bad in the like
Yeah.
simplest way to put it, that it's like he's not a horrible person. There's not like there's nothing redeemable about him, but he's still like not a good guy. like um but it was fun to just it was one of those moments too where it's like these two characters who like never get to interact to just kind of throw him and James together and have them speak. And it's also a big moment for James because he finds out that Regulus, you know, was had talked about them and had told people in his life about them, and he didn't think that Regulus would ever do that. I don't know. It's like it's kind of this big moment for him.
Yeah. No, like
Um,
also like Regulus meeting the father of the love of his life is just like it was important like for him, I think, but at
mhm.
the same time he knew what kind of person he was, and that was like confirming it basically for him.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, basically I wanted to ask you about Wolfstar, and people were asking me to ask you what happened, and but like if you are gonna like talk about this in like Chosen, that's fine.
Mhm.
You don't have to talk about it right now because I don't want to
So
like
yeah, she does like all of the kind of wolves, the wolf pack from
yeah.
Lupercal, they all come back in Chosen. So you see her. I would just say that like I don't think that Remus or Sirius ever think they're actually going to adopt her. I think they there's a moment where it's like I don't know, it's one of those like it's bittersweet sort of like the life the life we could have, but like they I think even they know in that moment that that is not the
Yeah.
life that they are going to have or do have. But she is in Chosen, so you will see.
I mean, because I could see how this could work out with Remus, but like with Sirius being in Azkaban for like 12 years, kind of hard.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Um, So I know you're writing other stories, like Office Bones. I think that I haven't started,
Hmm.
like I'm planning to. But I wanted to ask you if you have other like plans for stories that you haven't published yet, and like if you can tell us something about it, or um, I don't know if you're planning to write another, I don't know, big fic. I don't know how to say it.
Well, right now I have a bunch of works in progress that I'm just like trying to get through. So Of His Bones is like really close to being finished, which is my like pirate
Yeah.
AU, which has been very fun. And then I have Chosen, obviously. I have Killer, which is my, it's like, it's my Rose Killer fic. So the idea with that one is kind of similar to Choices, in that I was like, okay, like I want to follow them through uh, and see how this relationship works. So like in theory, that would be, is that's going to be a long one. It's like a, yeah,
That's
similar kind of.
that's set in Hogwarts.
It's set in Hogwarts. It's set in, so this is like a hard one too, because it's like canon compliant. I always say ish because I'm not huge on semantics and I change little details all the time, but like the big plot points are canon. Um, but it's not choices compliant, if that makes sense. Like they are not the same characters that they were in Choices, and Regulus and James are also not the same characters that they were in Choices. Like,
Oh, okay.
so it's canon compliant, but not choices compliant.
Makes sense. So since like I mean, I don't know if you've seen it, but like there is like a ranking of the ships in the like every fandom basically, and like Wolfstar is one of the top three, and then there's like choices, like not choices, like Jegulus, which is like
Hmm.
come to be one of the, I think it's in the top 10. I don't remember exactly the number, maybe like 5 or 6 or something like that, which means that a lot of people are like trying to like discover Jegulus, and like it's becoming one of the fan favorites, but
Hmm.
I know that it was not like that before. So it's kind of like weird but like fun. So how do you feel about this like rise, let's say, to like Regulus and James as a relationship in the fandom? Because
Yeah,
like there are like a lot
I
of
think
shit.
it's, yeah, I think it's interesting. I think it, like, it's sort of like what I was saying before about shipping. I think it tends to be a lot more about, like, trying to bring out different aspects of, like, characters or different plot points than it is about being, like, I, we all believe that these two people should, like, be together. And so I think what we just saw with Jegulus was, like, I think it's like I think the thing about Jegulus is that in a way it like brings like so many characters into the mix in a way. Like it's like, how do I explain this? Like we were saying with Drary, like a Drary fic is usually just about Harry and Draco.
Yeah.
But I think the thing about Jegulus is it's like automatically like Sirius is involved in this, right? In like some way or another. And then because Sirius is involved, like Remus is involved. And then like they're all involved, so like Peter is involved. And you can also get Peter involved in like the idea that like if Peter is the spy and like Regulus can find out or whatever. Like in a way, like this is kind of a ship that um really allows for you to tell the story of more characters
Yeah.
than just these two. And you even see that again with like now other characters have been developed more, like Pandora, like Evan and Barty, because they're then attached to Regulus, so they're characters that we weren't looking at before and now we are. And so I feel like that's a big part of why Jadis has taken off, because in a way that other ships don't necessarily, it really like involves the whole group.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, like I also just think, we find dynamics and storylines that we want to explore, and at different times, the fandom is obsessed with different dynamics and different stories. So you had Wolfstar for a while, you had Jilly for a while, and now I think you kind of have Jegulus, and it's
Yeah.
just like what stories people want to tell.
Yeah. And since like choices is one of the like for me, it's okay. okay, not that my opinion matters, but like it's one of like it's the top one for me. But like it's also very popular in the fandom as well. So like it's one of the big ones. I was wondering if you could like share any like reviews or funny stories about it, like in the response that you've had from readers, you know? Like this is a question that I ask to every author that I interview because like okay, usually authors have actual like reviews on Goodreads and stuff. And sometimes
Mhm.
I find like really funny ones to tell me, and it's funny to talk about it. And I love how people are passionate in their reviews. And sometimes I'm one of those people. But I was wondering if you had like funny reactions or stories that you could tell from like what the readers have told you about choices or something
I
like that.
wish I had some better ones. I'd say like something that I get that happens like at least once a week, I'll get a comment and it'll just be someone being like, James, you're so stupid. And without fail, it's a comment on chapter 2 of Choices because it ends with James being like, oh my gosh, I figured it out. Remus is in love with Mary. And like, so I don't even have to look at like, because when you get a comment on AO3, it'll just tell you the fic and then you have to click on it to find out which chapter it's on. And like, I always like, there must be like hundreds at this point of comments on this one chapter. And it's all just people being like, what an idiot. What? They're like, how, you've missed it. You've missed it, James. So like, that's the thing I get a lot. The other one that gets me sometimes is when people are like, they'll like comment halfway through the fic and they're like, wait, they die? And I'm like, yes, it's tagged. It's tagged canon compliant and canon compliant death. Like, yes. Yes,
What?
they're going to die.
Let me hold your hand while I tell you this.
Like, I'm so sorry, guys. Um,
No,
yeah.
no, wow, I
But like
love.
the crazy thing is like it's crazy to see the things that people make, like the fan art or the bound fix, or like I had someone send me a tote bag that they made that has like uh for a boy who walks around like he's made out of stone, Regulus touches like the sun
Oh
is
my
like
God.
written
Oh
on
my
it.
God.
How did you come up with that, like with that sentence? Like it's like, oh my God, I have like underlined it 20 times. It's like it's everything. How?
I I don't know. I just wrote it. Like most of this again, like I'm not a planner, so and then yeah, it's interesting like the things that people latch on to. Oh, no, you know what was funny? What
Yeah.
was the funniest thing that happened was when I wrote chapter 53 and it's like don't go to Troy.
Yeah.
And people who were like because there was like lots of reactions online, people were like, "Who's Troy?"
What?
They're,
No
they're
way.
like, "Where? Who's Troy?" Um and then with Crimson Rivers, there was also a reference to the same to the Iliad and to like the
Yeah.
war at Troy, and someone made a post about it, and then I responded to it. Like it was something about like Jegulus and some guy named Troy, and then I responded to it with a gif of Zac Efron from High School Musical because
No, because
his
that's
name
what
is
it
Troy.
No. Wow. Well, you never know who Troy can be. I
Who is Troy?
No, that's so funny. No. Okay. You actually replied to my question very good. So I want to thank you so much for taking part of this little, I mean, it was been a couple of hours chat with me. I appreciate it a lot. And I mean, by now you know how much I like and love choices, so you know how much it meant to me. So thank you so much.
Thank you. This was lovely.
Oh, it was lovely for me too. And yeah, I hope you had a good time.
I did. I did. It was great.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.